Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, dwyervip.com for NFL and NBA and Major League Baseball picks. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Obviously, it's early in the morning. I can't even remember the words to my own introduction. Anyway, let's talk about Danny Garcia versus Robert "The Ghost" Guerrero. Let me just say this. I like Garcia in this fight. It's an uncomfortable subject in boxing. But I believe, like Andy Lee, I believe Robert "The Ghost" Guerrero's reflexes have dimmed a little bit. Right? If you look at films of a younger Robert "The Ghost" Guerrero, right, you're going to notice that he's not getting hit with anywhere close to the number of flush shots that he's getting hit with now. Right? Simply put, he's getting hit with too many punches. I understand that he's still a world-class fighter. But in my opinion, right, he's not in his prime anymore. It's a little bit past midnight for him. And it's going to be hard for him to deal with offensively blessed fighters like Danny Garcia. If you look at the Garcia-Lamont Peterson fight, and keep in mind, Peterson is a guy who's fought many tough fighters, right? He's fought Amir Khan. He beat Amir Khan, right? He's fought Lucas Matisse. He's fought a bunch of guys, right? Timothy Bradley. He has a deep resume. But yet for the first half of his fight against Danny Garcia, Peterson was on his back foot, right? Garcia was hunting him. Peterson didn't want to engage. Now, when you see a world-class fighter backing away from an opponent for, half the fight, the first half of the fight, that tells you that that opponent is that dangerous. Right? Now, Danny Garcia's style reminds me of a great fighter's style, Julian Jackson's, right? The Hawk from the 1980s. Right? Danny Garcia is, like the Hawk, your prototypical, what I call, mid-range hooker. Right? Garcia's throwing power shots with both hands. They're predominantly hooks. He does have a straight right hand, but that straight right hand doesn't have a lot of butter on the bread, right? His bread and butter is really the hooks. So, he's coming forward and he's trying to stay at mid-range and he's trying to destroy you. So in my opinion, as an opponent, you need to either get inside of his tornado, right? He's like a tornado. You need to either get inside of the tornado where it's calm, or you need to somehow find a way to deal with the tornado from the outside. What you can't do with a mid-range hooker is actually stand there at mid-range and try to trade with him, right? You need the skill set of Mike McCallum, the guy who gave Julian Jackson his first loss in the 1980s, right? If you're going to try to actually stand right there with the Hurricane and try to trade, right? McCallum played a vertical game with Julian Jackson. He got inside. McCallum was blessed defensively. He blocks the shots, right? This is if you're not going to move in and smother or move out. McCallum blocks the shots. McCallum's nickname was the Body Snatcher. He starts throwing body punches to Julian Jackson, but understand the timing, right? Jackson throws a, left hand. McCallum blocks it. After McCallum blocks it, McCallum comes in with the body shot. Then Jackson throws the right hand, right? Because mid-range hookers are just using their balance to go from left to right. When Julian Jackson came back with the other hand, McCallum, of course, is ducking under punches and things like that. The Ghost can't duck these days. his balance isn't quite there. His reflexes aren't at the point where he can, you know, block a left, come back, block a right, come back, right? Um, in my opinion, right, the slowing reflexes makes him acutely vulnerable to Danny Garcia, right? I think Garcia is going to be the more active fighter, as hard as that is to believe against Robert the Ghost Guerrero. I think Garcia is going to come in. I think Garcia is going to hurt him. Garcia is the one with the better foot speed, right? Understand, when you're a mid-range hooker, you're coming in and you're doling out big punishment, right? Garcia's thinking more offense than defense, right? By the way, if you want to see a fight where a guy handles Garcia from the outside, I would encourage you to look at the Ashley Theophane fight, right? If you want to see a fight where a guy just defensively disengages Garcia, look at the Mauricio Herrera fight. At this point, right, I don't believe Guerrero has the foot speed to be Ashley Theophane, right? Nor do I believe Guerrero has the defensive skills to be Mauricio Herrera. So understand, the Carmagay fight for Guerrero, that's just a straight shootout, right? Guerrero, the Andre Berto fight for Guerrero, that's just a straight shootout. The Keith Thurman fight for Guerrero, right? There are too many of these. That's just a straight shootout, right? Guerrero's hanging around the pocket. He's taking shots. I'm telling you that over time, that catches up with the fighter. Let me say this too. The promoters love it, right? They call it a crowd-pleasing style, right? Look, I hope fighters reach a point where they're thinking more about themselves than the crowd, right? The people who love Guerrero need to be concerned that he's taking so many head shots, right? His head is bouncing around, right? When a fighter reaches this stage of his career, he needs to think about walking away from the sport, right? I'm just telling you, maybe you're winning fights, maybe you're in fights, maybe you're getting great paydays. Bottom line is that the crowd doesn't stay with you when you start to have health problems after your career, right? I've seen many a great fighter, Wilfred Benitez, right, just fade from public view after the guy develops health problems. We cheered him in his prime, right? We aren't with him when he needs us most now, right? Let me also point out that you look at fighters' careers. Guerrero gets knocked down against Keith Thurman, right? Knocked down, right? Andy Lee, as I said in an earlier video, has hit the canvas multiple times in his last 2 fights. When a guy starts his career on a long winning streak, when you're looking at the guy and you're thinking, oh yeah, this guy's hard to find in the ring, then the guy starts getting hit. Understand, there's an arc to everyone's career, right? Mike Tyson was unbeatable early in his career. Then you noticed he started to get hit, right? The Buster Douglas fight, he has a swollen eye. That was shocking. I'll tell you what, by the end of Mike Tyson's career, he was getting hit an awful lot, wasn't he? Right? Opponents who wouldn't have dreamt of even being competitive with Mike Tyson in his prime were suddenly having their hands raised at the end of fights. Right? It reached a point where Mike Tyson couldn't go the distance. All I'm saying is, Robert the Ghost Guerrero is slowly edging to that point. Right? Just look at the number of shots he takes against Andre Berto. Now, let me say this about Andre Berto. You know, Andre Berto can punch. In other words, if you're fighting Andre Berto, you don't want to get hit with a lot of shots from Andre Berto. right? This isn't like fighting, let's say, Sergio Mora, who's a craftsman in the ring, but who doesn't have the big punch, right? I know Danny Jacobs might feel differently about that, but Mora doesn't have the big punch, right? So I could understand a guy in there saying, you know what, I'm going to take a few Mora shots to dole out my own punishment. Okay, high risk strategy, but okay. But if you're fighting a puncher, right? If I'm fighting Gennady Golovkin, my strategy better not be, hey, let me take a few shots. I'm fighting Vladimir Klitschko. I say, you know what? I'm willing to trade with Vladimir Klitschko. Let me take a few shots because I think I can land mine. Well, understand, Andre Berto has a big punch, right? Look at the Victor Ortiz fight, folks. Look at how, that fight turns quickly. Berto ends up losing the fight, but Berto's doling out punishment, right? There have been Berto fights where Berto's changed the course of the fight on one punch. And I'm looking at Robert the Ghost Guerrero against Berto, and I've seen Berto land flush shots, right? And I have to ask myself, gee, what's going on here? Then I see him against Keith Thurman, another guy with a big punch, right? I'm just telling you, it's not a winning strategy to go in against Keith Thurman and say, you know what, I'm just going to trade with him. I'm going to allow him to hit me with some shots so I can hit him with some shots. Right? I'm not going to have a hand up at all times. I'm actually going to trade. Right? But yet, that's the way it's seen at times in the Robert the Ghost Guerrero fight. Well, good luck trying to trade with Danny Garcia. Ask Amir Khan how that turned out. Look at Amir Khan, by the way, at the end of the Danny Garcia fight. Khan looks like he's been in a car crash. Kind of looks like he's falling down a flight of stairs. Right? Look at Rod Salka, a guy who I personally thought would do a lot better against Danny Garcia. Look at Salka at the end of that fight. In a matter of seconds, Salka goes from urging Danny Garcia to trade with him to being on the canvas destroyed. Seconds. Right? So, Garcia, who, let's face it, outgrew 140 pounds a while ago, has been fighting at catch weights. His body might even thank him for the extra weight he's gaining for this fight. Right? I feel Garcia is catching the Ghost at the right time. Right? This isn't the Ghost, in my opinion, of a few years ago. Right? This is a different Ghost. This is one who is now having dimming reflexes. Let me close with this story. Freddie Roach was riding high. A lot of people were writing a lot of positive things about him. Right? Not Freddie Roach the trainer. I'm talking about Freddie Roach the fighter. Understand, there are chapters in the Freddie Roach book that take place before he becomes a trainer. Now, he had Joe Frazier's trainer in his corner, the legendary Eddie Futch. Think about it, right? Superstar trainer. And Eddie Futch, looked at some Freddie Roach fights and told Roach, hey, man, it's time to retire. Now, at the time, Freddie Roach was still getting some great fights. He was still getting good money, right? Good money, what we consider good money in boxing for guys who don't hold belts. You'll be surprised, by the way, how light that money is, right? Your, mailman might make most than most fighters. I'm serious about that. Well, anyway, Freddie Roach still had dreams, right? Here's Eddie Futch, and keep in mind, if a trainer thinks that you can win world-class fights, that trainer who's getting paid, right, would want to stay with you. Right? Eddie Futch told Freddie Roach, hey man, time to pull the plug. You're getting hit with some shots that you shouldn't be getting hit with. Right? You need to back away from the sport here. There are a lot of other things you can do in the sport, right? Of course, Eddie Futch would know because Eddie Futch is a trainer in the sport, right? He's not a fighter, right? So here he is talking to a fighter he cares about. This is the part of the sport we need more of. right? Trusted advisors giving you real advice, even when it takes money out of their pocket, right? So Eddie Futch told Freddie Roach what he didn't want to hear, that he should back away from the sport. And Freddie Roach, who, was a hardhead then, just like he's a hardhead now, said, hey, man, I'm not having this. I'm going to continue my career. Right? So he had a falling out with Eddie Futch. Now, I'm here butchering the story, but if you ever hear Freddie Roach tell the story today, he regrets that falling out. Today, he regrets not listening to Eddie Futch. Today, he had a series of fights where he got hit with too many shots, the kind of shots that wouldn't have touched him earlier in his career. Right? And now Freddie has a bit of a tremor that he believes was caused by boxing. Right? In my opinion, you can see guys, right? And I understand these, slowing reflexes come at the worst possible time. Right? Andy Lee, he's there, gets the title. Right? All I'm saying is the people around him need to say to him, hey man, look, Andy, let's not have many more fights. Let's just have the big challenging fights. In other words, if, Danny Jacobs calls you out and it's for a middleweight title, and you look on the film, right, and you think, hey, you know what, I can do some things against Danny Jacobs. And since this is a title fight, maybe it's worth the risk, one last shot at it. Okay, great. I could see that. But don't take lesser fights that are going to put your health at risk. Right? In my opinion, that's where Robert the Ghost Guerrero is right now. Right? That's where he is right now. Boxing, really, at the end of the day, is a young man's game. The older guys you're seeing out there, they're the survivors. They're the outliers. Right? No one's talking about Vladimir Klitschko's age. But yet Vladimir Klitschko's what? Late 30s. Right? Those are outlier type guys. Right? I'm just telling you that, in the 140s and the 150s, you're on borrowed time when you get into your 30s. Right? You're on borrowed time. And all I'm saying is the guys who survive in the sport are the guys who have defense. Why is Bernard Hopkins able to, continue fighting well into his late 40s? It's because Bernard Hopkins doesn't get hit with the kind of shots that Robert the Ghost Guerrero is getting hit with right now. Right? So I like Danny Garcia in this fight. The casino's giving you long odds. I don't think you have a chance to hedge the play. If I were to hedge it, I would take Guerrero by KO as the hedge. Right? Let me point out that Danny Garcia is the kind of guy who is very hard to beat if the fight goes the distance, because Danny is going to be on his front foot, throwing a lot of volume. There's also something to Danny that's hard to put into words. He's a very charismatic guy, right? It's like looking at an actor and saying, wow, this guy's a really good actor. There's something he conveys. It's almost a Tony Soprano quality to him, where you can actually sense him thinking in the ring. As you're watching a fight and you see him, you almost feel like you're inside of his head. That translates to the judges, right? So my point is simply, I don't see Robert the Ghost Guerrero winning this fight. I certainly don't see him winning this fight by decision. My pick here is Danny Garcia. That's how I see it. Let me hear from you. Let's discuss this, right? If you want to discuss Julian Jackson's style, how it compares to Danny Garcia's style, let's do that too, right? The Hawk is a fighter history needs to remember. Right? Anyway, I hope you leave your comments for all of us here in the comment section to this video. Thanks for stopping by.